Rain poured down Taylor's designer suit as he fell to his knees in the middle of a crowded Manhattan street. "Please, Felix." The once untouchable Alpha choked out tears mixing with the storm. "Don't look at him." But Felix simply adjusted his coat, turning toward another man. Here is their story. 5 years of devotion vanished over a single cup of black coffee. Felix Harper sat across the marble kitchen island of the Upper East Side penthouse, his hands wrapped around a warm mug, oblivious to the fact that his entire world was about to shatter. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow over Taylor Montgomery. Taylor was a prime alpha, the newly minted CEO of Montgomery Holdings, and the man Felix had loved since their cramped dorm room days at Columbia University. Taylor's scent, usually a comforting blend of dark roast coffee and bitter cedar, was completely smothered by heavily applied clinical scent blockers. It was the first red flag. "I'm announcing my engagement to the press this afternoon." Taylor stated, his voice as sterile and unyielding as a corporate spreadsheet. He didn't even look up from his tablet. Felix froze the porcelain mug, slipping a fraction in his grip. "Your engagement." A nervous laugh escaped his lips. "Taylor, what are you talking about? We haven't even gone ring shopping. You told me we were waiting until the Q3 earnings report." "Not to you, Felix." Taylor interrupted, his icy blue eyes finally meeting Felix's. There was no warmth in them, no trace of the boy who used to hold Felix through his feverish heat cycles. "I am marrying Alex Kensington. The merger with Kensington Global requires a bonded union between our families. It's business. You've always known my family would never accept an unpedigreed Omega with no political backing." The silence that followed was deafening. Felix's natural scent, a delicate and soothing mix of white peach and petrichor, soured instantly into burnt sugar and distress. His Omega instincts screamed at the sudden sharp rejection from his chosen mate, sending a wave of physical nausea crashing through his body. "Business," Felix whispered, his voice trembling as he stood up. "I worked 3 jobs to pay for your MBA when your father cut you off. I drafted your first business proposals. I sat by your hospital bed when you crashed your car. 5 years, Taylor. You are my alpha." Taylor stood up, his towering frame casting a shadow over Felix. He deliberately released a burst of his dominant alpha pheromones, a cruel tactic meant to force an Omega into submission. "I am not your alpha, Felix. We are not bonded. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement during my youth. I've instructed my assistant to wire $200,000 into your account. Consider it severance. I need you out of the penthouse by noon. Alex is moving his things in." The sheer arrogance, the absolute lack of empathy in Taylor's tone snapped something deep inside Felix. The desperate weeping Omega that Taylor likely expected to see never surfaced. Instead, a cold, protective shell hardened around Felix's heart. He refused to cower under the oppressive cedar scent. "Keep your money," Felix said, his voice dropping to a dead, hollow whisper. "I wouldn't want to put a dent in your precious merger." By 11:30 a.m., Felix walked out of the luxury high-rise with nothing but 2 suitcases containing his clothes and his laptop. He left behind the designer watches Taylor had bought him, the keys to the Porsche, and the life he thought he was building. The immediate aftermath was a brutal reality check. Manhattan was a ruthless city for an unbonded, unemployed Omega. Felix crashed on the worn-out sofa of his best friend Toby in a cramped, drafty apartment in Brooklyn. For the first 2 weeks, Felix could barely keep food down. The physiological withdrawal from a long-term alpha partner left him bedridden, trembling with fever, and plagued by night terrors. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Taylor's indifferent face. But Felix was a survivor. When the third week rolled around, he dragged himself into the cramped bathroom, looked at his pale, gaunt reflection, and made a promise. No alpha would ever dictate his worth again. He heavily applied suppressants, masking his sweet peach scent behind a wall of artificial odorless chemicals. He updated his resume, leveraging the silent, uncredited work he had done for Montgomery Holdings, and began applying to every major financial firm in the city. He faced dozens of rejections, many interviewers subtly wrinkling their noses when they realized he was an Omega, implicitly doubting his ability to handle the high-stress environment of private equity. Then he secured an interview at Croft Capital. Croft Capital was the apex predator of the financial world, a massive firm that had been aggressively eating into Montgomery Holdings' market share. It was founded by Sebastian Croft, a self-made enigma, a classification of alpha so rare and powerful they operated on an entirely different level of emotional and instinctual control. Felix walked into the towering glass and steel headquarters, feeling a knot of anxiety in his stomach. During his final interview, he was led not to an HR manager, but directly into the corner office. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk was Sebastian Croft. Unlike Taylor's slick, overly groomed appearance, Sebastian possessed a rugged, undeniable intensity. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, his dark hair slightly ruffled. The moment Felix stepped into the room, he noticed something incredibly rare. The office was equipped with advanced, pheromone-neutralizing vents. Sebastian was deliberately suppressing his own dominant scent to ensure his employees, regardless of their secondary gender, felt entirely comfortable. Sebastian reviewed Felix's portfolio. "Your market analysis models are brilliant," Sebastian said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that sent an involuntary, pleasant shiver down Felix's spine. "But I noticed a gap. You have a 2-year period where your models perfectly match the proprietary strategies used by Montgomery Holdings. Care to explain?" Felix stiffened. He could lie, but something about Sebastian's piercing amber eyes demanded absolute honesty. "I was heavily involved in advising their current CEO during that period," Felix answered carefully. "Unofficially." Sebastian leaned back, steepling his fingers. A faint hint of his scent slipped through the vents, sandalwood and a crisp ocean breeze. It was grounding, protective, completely devoid of the toxic dominance Taylor constantly projected. "Montgomery is a fool," Sebastian stated simply. "If he had a mind like yours and let it walk out the door, he deserves to lose. You start Monday as a senior project analyst. Welcome to Croft Capital, Felix." Over the next 18 months, Felix underwent a stunning transformation. Free from the suffocating shadow of an arrogant alpha, he thrived. His brilliance in risk assessment earned him rapid promotions. He moved out of Toby's apartment and bought a beautiful sunlit loft in Tribeca. More importantly, under Sebastian's respectful and fiercely protective leadership, Felix slowly stopped wearing the harsh, chemical scent blockers. He allowed his natural white peach and petrichor scent to bloom in the office, finding that the alphas and betas at Croft Capital respected his boundaries completely. Sebastian and Felix's relationship evolved from strictly professional to deeply personal. Sebastian would often stay late just to bring Felix takeout from his favorite Thai restaurant. They would sit on the office floor surrounded by financial reports, laughing and debating until midnight. Sebastian never pushed, never commanded. He simply stood by Felix like an immovable mountain, offering unwavering support. Meanwhile, Taylor Montgomery's life was quietly fracturing. His marriage to Alex Kensington was a political success, but a personal nightmare. Alex was vain, endlessly demanding, and his artificial rose scent constantly gave Taylor migraines. More devastatingly, Montgomery Holdings was bleeding capital. A series of aggressive acquisitions had backfired, and Taylor found himself constantly outmaneuvered by Croft Capital. Late at night, sitting in his cold, silent penthouse, Taylor would catch himself searching the pillows for the lingering scent of white peach. The realization was a slow, agonizing poison he had traded a diamond for a handful of rhinestones. The inevitable collision occurred in late December at the prestigious Winter Conservatory Ball held at the Waldorf Astoria. The gala was the most crucial networking event of the year, a place where multi-billion-dollar deals were whispered over champagne. Taylor arrived with Alex clinging to his arm, complaining loudly about the valet service. Taylor looked exhausted, his eyes scanning the opulent ballroom with a sense of profound emptiness. Then the air shifted. Through the heavy perfume of hundreds of wealthy elites, a faint, familiar scent ghosted past Taylor's senses. White peach and rain. His alpha instincts flared to life so violently that he physically stumbled. His heart hammered against his ribs as he turned toward the grand staircase. There stood Felix. He was breathtaking. Dressed in a tailored midnight blue velvet suit that accentuated his slender frame, Felix looked radiant, confident, and utterly untouchable. He was laughing a bright, genuine sound Taylor hadn't heard in years. Taylor's breath hitched. He took a step forward, completely ignoring Alex's squawking protests. His mind went blank, driven purely by the primal urge to reclaim what was his. He shoved past a group of tech billionaires, his eyes locked onto his former Omega. Felix. Taylor breathed out, finally breaching the outer circle of the crowd. Felix turned. The bright smile immediately vanished, replaced by a cool, polite mask of indifference. He looked at Taylor, not with love nor with hatred, but with the terrifying blankness of someone looking at a complete stranger. "Taylor," Felix replied evenly, his voice steady. "It's been a while." The lack of submission infuriated Taylor's ego. "What are you doing here?" Taylor demanded, stepping too close, trying to envelop Felix in his cedar scent. "Whose arm did you have to cling to, just to get an invitation to this tier of the room? Are you trying to make me jealous because—" Before Taylor could finish his arrogant sentence, a large, warm hand settled gently but firmly on the small of Felix's back. The oppressive cedar scent was instantly obliterated by a massive wave of sandalwood and ocean air, so powerful and commanding that several alphas nearby physically took a step back. Sebastian Croft stepped smoothly to Felix's side, his amber eyes locking on to Taylor with the deadly calm of an apex predator. "He didn't need to cling to anyone, Montgomery," Sebastian said, his voice dropping to a lethal rumbling register. "He is my head of strategy, my honored guest, and my partner. Is there a problem here, or do you need security to help you find your way back to your husband?" Taylor stared at the hand, resting intimately on Felix's waist, a sickening wave of jealousy and profound realization crashing over him. He had thrown Felix away, expecting him to break. Instead, Felix had forged himself into a weapon, and he was currently standing beside the one man capable of destroying Taylor completely. Tension crackled in the opulent air of the Waldorf Astoria, thick enough to choke a lesser man. Taylor stood frozen, the overwhelming pressure of Sebastian's enigma pheromones forcing a cold sweat down his spine. Alpha instincts, usually demanding dominance and submission from everyone in the room, suddenly screamed at Taylor to bare his neck and retreat. He could only watch in muted horror as Sebastian gently guided Felix away, their combined scents of sandalwood ocean breeze and sweet white peach intertwining in a perfect harmonious bond that Taylor had foolishly thrown away. Months bled into a grueling winter, and the consequences of Taylor's arrogance finally began to manifest not just in his personal life, but in the very foundation of Montgomery Holdings. The Kensington merger, which was supposed to solidify his empire, turned out to be a hollow shell game. Alex Kensington was not the brilliant socialite Taylor had been led to believe. He was a reckless spender with a severe gambling addiction. Millions of dollars from the joint corporate accounts were quietly siphoned away to cover Alex's debts in underground high-stakes poker games in Macau. Without Felix's meticulous financial foresight and rigorous risk assessment models, Taylor was flying blind. He approved the acquisition of a failing biomedical tech startup called Genesis Innovations, a deal Felix had specifically warned him against 2 years prior. Felix had flagged their patent pipeline as highly volatile and legally dubious. Taylor, blinded by his own ego and desperate for a win to appease his furious board of directors, ignored the old warnings. 3 weeks after the acquisition finalized, the FDA launched a massive investigation into Genesis Innovations for falsifying clinical trial data. Montgomery Holdings' stock plummeted 40% in a single afternoon. Sitting in his cavernous, painfully silent office, Taylor stared at the flashing red lines on his Bloomberg terminal. His breathing was shallow, his chest tight with an anxiety he had never known. The clinical scent blockers he still forced his employees to wear did nothing to mask the stench of his own failure. He reached for his phone, his thumb hovering instinctively over Felix's old contact number. He desperately needed his Omega's brilliant mind to navigate this catastrophe. He needed the comforting scent of rain and peaches to soothe the violent, frantic pacing of his inner alpha. He pressed call. The automated voice of the carrier coldly informed him the number had been disconnected. A sharp physical pain shot through Taylor's chest. It was the beginning of an alpha drop, a severe physiological breakdown caused by the prolonged absence of a compatible mate and the crushing weight of profound failure. His body was literally turning on him, punishing him for abandoning the bond he had fostered for 5 years. He staggered to his private executive bathroom, bracing his hands against the cold marble sink, staring at his gaunt, shadowed reflection. He looked like a ghost of the man who had callously handed over a $200,000 severance check. Meanwhile, across the city, Felix was experiencing a completely different kind of corporate and personal ascension. Croft Capital was soaring, directly benefiting from the market share Montgomery Holdings was rapidly bleeding. But more importantly, Felix was finally experiencing what it meant to be truly cherished. Sebastian Croft was a revelation. Enigmas were often portrayed in modern media as aggressive, uncontrollable forces of nature, but Sebastian was the exact opposite. His power lay in his absolute control and his unwavering patience. He recognized that Felix carried deep emotional scars from Taylor's sudden betrayal, and he navigated those wounds with the precision and care of a master craftsman restoring a priceless artifact. It started with small, deliberate actions. Sebastian installed a specialized ergonomic chair at Felix's desk after noticing the Omega rubbing his lower back during long strategy meetings. He remembered Felix's coffee order, down to the exact temperature, bringing it to him every morning without fail. When Felix went into a mild heat cycle, a vulnerable time that previously meant hiding in a dark room, while Taylor complained about the inconvenience, Sebastian cleared his entire schedule. He didn't demand intimacy. Instead, he brought a massive array of incredibly soft, luxurious cashmere blankets to Felix's Tribeca loft, ordered massive amounts of comforting food, and sat outside Felix's bedroom door, projecting a thick, protective aura of sandalwood that allowed Felix to sleep peacefully for the first time in his life during a cycle. The turning point occurred in early spring. Croft Capital had just finalized a massive global logistics buyout, a deal orchestrated entirely by Felix. To celebrate, Sebastian rented out the entire rooftop botanical garden of a prestigious downtown restaurant. Fairy lights twinkled among the rare orchids and lush ferns. Felix leaned against the glass railing, looking out over the glittering Manhattan skyline, nursing a glass of sparkling cider. He felt a warm, heavy presence step up close behind him. Sebastian draped his own suit jacket over Felix's shoulders, the deep, grounding scent of the enigma wrapping around him like a physical shield. "You did incredible work today, Felix," Sebastian murmured, his deep voice vibrating pleasantly against Felix's back. "The board was universally impressed, but more importantly, I am proud of you." Felix turned around, looking up into Sebastian's warm, amber eyes. The fear and insecurity that Taylor had ruthlessly installed in his heart had completely dissolved. "I couldn't have done it without the environment you created, Sebastian. You gave me the space to breathe." Sebastian reached out gently, tucking a stray lock of hair behind Felix's ear. His touch was incredibly reverent. "You always had the fire, little storm. I merely opened a window so you could burn brighter. I want to formally request the honor of courting you, Felix. No business arrangements, no hidden agendas, just you and me building a life together." Tears pricked Felix's eyes, but they were tears of profound relief and overwhelming joy. He didn't hesitate. He leaned forward, pressing his face into Sebastian's chest, inhaling the scent of his true home. "Yes," Felix whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Sebastian." Word of the official courtship spread through the elite financial circles of New York like wildfire. When the news finally reached Taylor, it broke the last remaining pillar of his sanity. Taylor's marriage to Alex imploded spectacularly a week later. The tabloids published highly explicit photos of Alex leaving a notorious underground club with Jasper, a well-known beta model, clearly intoxicated and draped all over the younger man. The public humiliation was absolute. Taylor's board of directors called an emergency vote of no confidence. Within 48 hours, Taylor was officially stripped of his title as CEO of Montgomery Holdings, the company his grandfather had built. He lost his company, his husband, his reputation, and his wealth in one devastating swoop. Stripped of his arrogant armor, the terrifying reality of his actions finally crashed down upon him. He had sacrificed the only pure, genuine love he had ever known for a handful of hollow, toxic power. He was drowning, and the only person who had ever known how to save him was currently wrapped in the arms of an enigma. Desperation breeds madness. Taylor began stalking the perimeter of Croft Capital. He would sit in his rented sedan, the Porsche had been repossessed, staring up at the towering glass windows, his mind fractured and obsessing over the past. He hallucinated the scent of peaches in his cramped, cheap apartment. He needed to see Felix. He needed to explain that he made a mistake, that the corporate world had corrupted his mind, that they were meant to be together. He convinced his shattered alpha ego that if he just apologized, Felix's omega instincts would override everything and force him to return. He checked Felix's schedule through an old mutual contact, Toby, who reluctantly revealed that Felix and Sebastian were celebrating their 6-month anniversary at a highly exclusive French restaurant in Midtown. A torrential downpour battered Manhattan that Friday evening. The sky was bruised and violent, unleashing a freezing, relentless rain that flooded the gutters and chased the city's inhabitants indoors. Felix and Sebastian stepped out from the warm, golden glow of the restaurant, beneath the protective canopy of the valet stand. Felix was laughing softly at something Sebastian had whispered, his eyes crinkling with genuine happiness. He wore a stunning silver trench coat, and his natural scent was bright and content, completely unbothered by the harsh weather outside. Sebastian held a large black umbrella, his arm securely fastened around Felix's waist, a silent, immovable guardian. Suddenly, a figure stumbled out from the shadows of the neighboring alleyway, slipping on the wet pavement. "Felix!" The voice was ragged, desperate, and torn to shreds by the freezing rain. Felix stopped his laughter, dying in his throat. He turned his eyes, widening in shock. Taylor Montgomery stood in the pouring rain. He looked absolutely unrecognizable. His designer suit was soaked through, plastered to his drastically thinned frame. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and his face was gaunt, unshaven, and violently pale. He was shivering uncontrollably, completely ignoring the freezing downpour. "Taylor!" Felix asked, his voice entirely devoid of the affection that once resided there. It was the tone one might use when spotting a stray, mangy dog on the street. Hearing his name on Felix's lips caused the last string holding Taylor together to snap. He stumbled forward, ignoring the immediate, terrifying flare of Sebastian's enigma pheromones that rolled out like a physical wall of force, warning him to stay back. Rain poured down Taylor's designer suit as he fell heavily to his knees in the middle of the crowded Manhattan street, right at the edge of the valet canopy. The filthy street water soaked through his expensive trousers, but he didn't care. He looked up at Felix, his icy blue eyes wide, bloodshot, and overflowing with agonizing regret. "Please, Felix!" The once untouchable Alpha choked out tears mixing freely with the freezing storm. "Please. I was wrong. I was so arrogant, so incredibly blind. I lost everything. I lost my company. I lost my mind, but none of it matters. The only thing that matters is that I lost you." Felix stared down at the man who had been the center of his universe for 5 years. He felt no vindication, no triumphant joy. He only felt a profound, chilling pity. "Taylor, get up. You're making a scene," Felix said, quietly adjusting the collar of his silver coat. "No, I will not get up until you listen to me." Taylor wailed his voice, cracking a pathetic sound that made the few passing pedestrians stop and stare. He reached out a trembling hand, desperately trying to catch the edge of Felix's coat, but Sebastian smoothly pulled Felix back a half step, keeping him out of reach. Taylor's eyes snapped to Sebastian, a sudden irrational spike of furious jealousy overriding his despair. "Don't look at him!" Taylor screamed, his voice raw. "Look at me, Felix. I am your Alpha. We spent 5 years together. I know your favorite books. I know how you take your tea. I know the scar on your shoulder. He doesn't know you. He's just using you to destroy my legacy." Sebastian didn't even flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked down at the pathetic figure kneeling in the puddles with absolute, crushing indifference. "Your legacy destroyed itself, Montgomery. And as for knowing him, I know the man he is today. The man you actively tried to suffocate." "Shut up!" Taylor sobbed, bowing his head so low it nearly touched the wet concrete. "Felix, I am begging you. I will do anything. I will work in the mailroom. I will let you brand me. Just come back. My Alpha is dying without you. Please, I am on my knees. I am nothing without you." Silence descended under the canopy, save for the rhythmic drumming of the heavy rain against the umbrella. Felix looked down at the broken, sobbing mess of an Alpha who had once callously told him he was an unpedigreed Omega unworthy of a ring. "You're right, Taylor." Felix finally spoke, his voice carrying the calm, absolute finality of a judge delivering a sentence. "You are nothing without me. But that is your burden to bear, not mine." Taylor's head snapped up a look of utter horror, freezing his features. "You didn't love me, Taylor." Felix continued, his eyes cold and steady. "You loved what I did for you. You loved the convenience, the free labor, the unwavering support that fed your massive ego. You threw me out the moment you thought someone else could give you more power. You didn't break my heart. You shattered my blind loyalty. And I thank you for it." Felix reached up gently, resting his hand over Sebastian's large hand that was holding the umbrella. He leaned slightly into the Enigma's side, deliberately, allowing his sweet peach scent to flare out, wrapping tightly around Sebastian's sandalwood, in a clear, undeniable public display of claiming. "Because if you hadn't thrown me away," Felix said, his voice softening only as he glanced up at Sebastian, "I would never have found the man who actually respects me. I would never have found my true mate." Taylor let out a gutted, agonizing scream. It was the horrific sound of a bond permanently, completely severing in the spiritual and biological sense. He collapsed forward, his hands slapping against the flooded pavement, sobbing uncontrollably into the dirty water, completely broken, utterly abandoned, and entirely alone. Felix didn't look back. He simply adjusted his coat, turning toward Sebastian. "Take me home, Sebastian," Felix murmured softly. "Always my love." Sebastian replied, his deep voice wrapping around Felix like a warm embrace. They stepped into the waiting town car, the heavy door shutting with a solid, definitive thud, leaving the arrogant Alpha to drown in the storm of his own, making a forgotten relic of a past Felix had long since outgrown. Did Felix make the right choice? Or do you think true mates deserve a second chance? No matter the betrayal, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you loved this drama-packed Omegaverse story, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our daily realistic audio dramas. See you in the next video.